welcome to Everlasting Talk. Hello, welcome to Everlasting Talk. I'm your host, Evaristo, and today in the Biography series, I'm talking about Karl Marx. Karl Marx was one of the most influential people in history with his revolutionary ideas that would be the groundwork for communism and forever change the course of history. His ideologies, it's sparked sides between left and right, conflict between mother and parents and their siblings, families and friends, countries. It's divided. Anything from the Soviet Union to China, Korea, Vietnam, Nicaragua, countries that use his ideology, against capitalism, and he was the father of it. Karl Marx was a German philosopher, historian, journalist, economist, political theorist, and social revolutionary. Born on May 5th, 1818 in Trier, Germany, to Heinrich Marx and Henriette Pressburg, ethnically Jewish, the family would convert to join the Evangelical Church of Prussia, but the country of Prussia itself was more of a Catholic country. So the family was already, kind of on the side of, like something that most of the people don't agree with. His father would be a lawyer, and his mother was a part of the Philips Electronics Company in the Netherlands. He was the third of 9 children, and they were baptized into a Lutheran church in 1824. Karl was educated at home by his father until 1830. His father would teach him ideologies of, be able to support yourself. You don't need, these ideologies that were anti-government of Prussia. Eventually, his father would send him to Trier High School. The school would be raided by the government in 1832 due to the teaching material that was outlawed. It was mostly like they were teaching political idealism, and the government decided to actually remove many faculty during his time there. It looks like the government wanted people to obey them, and this was more of an idea where you would go ahead and have more freedoms and more political attitudes towards things. So actually in 1835, at the age of 17, he ended up attending University of Bonn. He was excused from military service when he turned 18 because he actually had a condition called weak chest, quotation marks. It was pretty much like a respiratory disease or condition, and that excused him from the military. He actually ended up finding the love of his life through one of his mentors. Her name was Jenny von Westphalen. I can't say that. Sorry, guys. If you're German, you could correct me. Let me know how to say it. But he was they got engaged in 1836 and then married in 1843. He was studying law before he got married, and he was interested in philosophy, where he ended up meeting several radical thinkers called the Young Heligans. There's 2 sides. There's a left and a right, the Young Heligans and the New Heligans. And he decided to go with the Young Heligans. He actually ended up writing several fiction and nonfiction novels in 1837 to 1841. So he was very involved in writing, material already, but it was more nonfiction. Between 1842 to 1848, he would actually find himself in Cologne, Germany, then Paris, and then to Brussels. There's not really much on why he did that, but it was more to for his ideologies. He actually ended up meeting Friedrich Engels, who would be his lifelong friend and actually guide him to more of the ideas that he ended up founding, like socialism. So it was pretty much one of the people he worked with for many years. And, they became the best of friends and collaborated. In 1845, with the Holy Family. In Brussels, he'd be joined by Engels and others. And he actually came out with on the Jewish question. Pretty much, it was like 1844. It was pretty much where it seemed like it was more anti-Semitic than anything, which would be kind of weird because he's actually ethnically Jewish himself, which was kind of like contradictory. But he says that in the beginning, if you read some of it on the Jewish question, it talks about how the Jewish community wanted emancipation from the rest of Germany, and he says, "Why do you want that?" So so it pretty much goes into detail about civil rights and whether the Jewish people should be granted those rights as Christians, so equality. In the laws in the law actually in Prussia restricted people of Jewish descent with regrets to like commercial activities and events and opportunities. So it kind of like restricted them. And being, like I mentioned, Marx himself was Jewish, so his father would deal with many of that. So it was kind of like to the best interest to more of the radical side, because religion was too much of a divide for people to go ahead and like, be able to go ahead and like decide to make things happen because of their Jewish ancestry. So there was most people wanting to renounce religions, so be more of an equal playing field, and people would actually go ahead and if a free citizen from a property qualifies for that, but it's actually, you can't do it without liberating people of private property. So it's more of going more into, he went to argue about like how as a question of re-anticipation can be free to practice your religion without being free of alienation because of that religion. So he went into detail of that. He also ended up writing the Communist Manifesto, which was published on February 21st, 1848. He was actually arrested by Belgian forces, accused of actually arming the rebels, which he caused them to leave Cologne. The Communist Manifesto, which was pretty much a catalyst of like what communism will be, and it'll be definitely influential because, I mean, there's still countries today that believe strongly in communism, and a lot of people do too. A lot of socialism and social democracy. Like the government should have all the control. Everybody should be paid equal. Things like that. Many wars have been fought. Vietnam, Korea, Cuba. But Castro overthrowing Batista in that government, Sandinistas, and in Contras in Nicaragua. What else? Pretty much the whole entire Eastern Europe, fighting for their independence from the Soviet Union, and then the Soviet Union themselves, pretty much dominating most of the world. China, that's the biggest issue we have now. The United States being a capitalist country and China being a socialist communist country, kind of leaning away towards that now because of their economies. But just all these conflicts throughout history, and Karl Marx was definitely influential in that. He actually ended up leaving Cologne because of that, where eventually ended up in London, where he actually wrote for the New York Daily Times, which is surprising. He worked for an American publication. He was anti, capitalist, anti, democracy. And he actually released The Capital. And he would actually release other books as well. So The Capital was one of the last works he did. He would actually go ahead and, be able to, be a big influence, not many people could say that they wrote a book and then it's been affected like the world for many decades and centuries to come. I think it was almost 200 years. I mean, not until the fall of the Soviet Union, it's been like almost a couple hundred years. So it's not like his ideology just went on the wayside. He actually went ahead and changed the world and their thinking, good or bad. I mean, depends on what you believe in, wherever you are out there. On the Jewish question, if you actually want to look more into this, I mean, I definitely just give you a synopsis of what it's about. Well, actually, before that, he would actually pass away on March 14th, 1883. And that since then, he actually got buried in London, of all places. So, if anything, I recommend if you want to do more research, there's definitely good books out there. I got a book called The Selected Writings. I'm not going to mention the name of the author, but you should definitely look at that. It has all of his writings in one book. So it's like on the Jewish question. It has Capital. It has the Communist Manifesto. If you want to look at that, there's definitely other ones as well. I mean, German Ideology, the 18th Brumaire of Louis Bonaparte. Like I mentioned, Capital, Economic and Philosophic Manuscripts. The Civil War in France. That was more later in his life. He wrote the Critique of the Gotha Program. Bakunin's Statism and Anarchy excerpt. So you definitely, if you want to look at those are definitely good sources for you. I mean, hopefully I explained more about who he was, but his influence, like I mentioned the last couple of times. But it definitely changed the course of the world. We went, all these countries started, fighting against capitalism and democracy. And some of them still are socialist, communist countries, and the Cold War. Until 1989 when the Soviet Union fell. People say it's dead, but it's still definitely alive out there, and it's in the small, like it's still in most countries, but it's not like the massive, threat it was like before with Russia, with the Soviet Union. So I definitely, if anything, if you want more research, there's definitely great books out there, like the ones I mentioned. And if you ever want to, look up more, definitely go for that. But I thank you so much, guys, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of Karl Marx. And thank you for listening. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube, and leave a review. Your feedback is helpful on how I do these episodes. Thank you. Until next time. Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of Everlasting Talk. For more content, follow us on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram at Everlasting Talk. Thank you.